Hello, everyone, and welcome to a little bit of a Reddit recap. Yesterday, exactly 23 hours ago, I made a post on Reddit titled "The Thoughts About Trackmania Esports." It's a long post outlining what I've been seeing roughly in the past like 3 months regarding competitions in Trackmania. And if you don't want to read it, it is a short TLDR here. What do you like, not like about Trackmania esports maps? They're not every competition can have a Red Bull faster map quality. Should tournaments be aimed to pro players only or include average players more? So this is a little bit of a it's not really a rant, but it's an observation that I have done in the past couple months on Twitch, on Discords, on Reddit, everywhere, YouTube comments, and yeah, I was just wondering what people, on Reddit, think about esports in Trackmania. I have played in pretty much the past. 5 competitions, Red Bull, Beacon, Duo League, and now the Trackmania World Tour, and all have different kinds of map styles, map pack, map difficulty, etc., etc. So, if you want to read the post, you can do that. I'll leave a link in the comments down below. But yeah, let's have a look what people have been saying about this, and we're just gonna go with best from the top. So here we have Two Big Feet and a Head. Great name. Says, I think it makes sense if the difficulty of World Tour maps is aimed at the top players. To me, that's the purpose of this particular series of tournaments. I agree with that. For the rest of us, I think Trackmania World Tour primarily should be entertaining to watch. That is achieved by having close, nail-biting matches. What I think the current map pack is lacking is watchability. The maps are quite difficult for a casual to follow. That's what Red Bull did really well. The maps were cool to watch. With that in mind, I think the World Tour would benefit from maps that are difficult but more themed, rather than all being multi-style. I think so as well. And one thing that I remembered is the problem with World Tour is that their slogan. What was their slogan? It was like, open for everyone, or something like this. It's open for everyone, but it's not really. It kind of is open for everyone, but not really open for everyone in terms of like skill level. So that is this is a good topic actually. Good post here. We have a reply here. I think Limbo is a good example. I remember that map because of the theme of the water bounces under the bars. The other maps all blur together to me, and I can't place a name with an image of the map in my head. That is also true. I agree with that. Themes for sure. Is every map multi-style and aesthetic similar to? I get branding, but A. It's completely boring to watch. I cannot tell the maps apart when idly remembering. True. Identities used to help a lot with remembering maps. No clue why they don't really use them anymore. I still recognize Agility Dash identity from Trackmania World Tour 23. It was so iconic. True. Yeah, I agree. I agree with pretty much everything that was said there. I do agree. I do agree. I think the bigger, so we have CPPN02. I think the bigger issue with competitive maps and what Red Bull mostly got right isn't even how playable they are for lesser players, but how readable, both in route and scenery. Too many competitive maps are just straight up confusing until you watch them for a good bit, and if you don't get commentary, you also miss most of the intricacies. The recent Beacon maps are a very notable example of this. The Red Bull maps were simply so much easier to follow right from the start. TMGL usually also had a good balance here with relatively simple designs, and then you had the identity to add the spice. While more gimmicky and, as far as I know, not always that popular with the pros, as a viewer, I usually like the maps in Zerator's competition. Since he echoes quite a few things that others and myself said in this thread, here is Granady Steak.
TLDR, what do you like?
This guy reacted to my thing. We'll watch that after. the way he started was already oof. TLDR. Anyway, Readability for both players and spectators. I feel the Red Bull maps also had great visuals, not just in the way they actually looked, but in how each part had a recognizable look. You knew where the players were on the track just by the scenery. Standard, typical, non-descript scenery of the beacon maps is a perfect example too. In most cases, the scenery does not vary through the track. You need to learn map to properly follow. As a casual, very average player, I agree with this. The Red Bull maps had a very distinct sections. If you watch the match for a couple of minutes, you probably know the route, what the difficult parts are, and what the player's strengths and weaknesses are on the map compared to those. The Trackmania World Tour maps, like a big bowl of spaghetti. I mean, that's delicious. It all looks the same, and the only thing you're engaged in as someone who hasn't played the maps, which I'm not going to do, I probably can't even finish them, is the player's standings in and between rounds. I don't know if or how you can achieve this distinction between parts without great scenery like that of Red Bull, but I do feel that's lacking. Yeah. So maybe before I continue, it's fair to show some of the points I made about the whole Red Bull thing, because maybe a lot of people don't realize this, but in this in this little paragraph here, let me first preface this whole discussion with something I have read ever since the Red Bull Faster tournament was played. The maps for this event were amazing. It had a theme, it had charm, and it was fun to drive. Difficulty was there, but not to the extreme. So many different skill levels of players could partake in the fun. However, people don't realize that these maps were in the making for months and cost a lot of money. Money that Trackmania World Tour simply does not have. Production is lacking, resources for running the server is lacking. Pretty much a lot is lacking. I fully agree with everyone saying the Red Bull Faster maps were more fun to play watch, but with the given context, Trackmania World Tour can never achieve this. Maybe 20% of it. I'm like, would the 20%, like even if it's just 20%, would it still be better? Or would it just be the same? That's also one thing. Anyway, let's continue. Something that I think often gets missed in the conversation, I enjoy racing 10x more if I'm intimately familiar with the track. I am most invested in Formula 1 when it's a historic track where I know every corner and I've driven it myself. I was very invested in Trackmania World Tour Stage 1 and 2 because you played the E maps a million times. When World Cup rolled around, I didn't give a shit. Okay. I was very invested in Red Bull literally because the track was track of the day. That's all it took. If Faster Downhill was never track of the day, I probably don't watch. Wow. This is the one thing that they need to take away. We have context for what CS players, LoL players, Rocket League players are doing. I'm an extremely active Trackmania player and I have zero context how hard it is to play Sunburn. I have zero clue what happens after Water Section 3. I have zero concept how fast a 52.5 is. Bring back the E-tracks. Fair. Fair. Let's have a look at Legion. Legion is... Dude, people have gone the extra mile to comment, by the way. I respect it. Because not only did I post this for the purpose of having a discussion, but it's also for me personally, because as I say here, I ask these questions because I am going to be organizing my own homologated events, which will be way more focused on the average player experience, fun competitive maps that have a theme and drive a bit more sloppy. So this was also one of the reasons why I made this post, to get
Peng, 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 your mama, peng, peng, zack, things booms, wow.
To get feedback,
Zack,
to
peng.
see what actually what people actually want to watch, right? So let's have a read at Legion. As someone who plays and commentates over Trackmania esports, finding the balance, like you mentioned, is difficult. Make the maps too easy and the races can get boring. If the round gets decided in the first turn because you took a slightly better, and now that advantage can be overcome even with mistakes and safe driving. Make it too hard and the learning process can start to beat you down and become more and more frustrating. I'll admit that seeing the top players flow through what is effectively a minefield with such speed and precision is almost mesmerizing to watch. Like the drivers are in a trance while they're out there. But at the same time, running the maps myself, I find myself saying, God, I'm glad I'm commentating and not racing. If you then play those difficult maps, you realize the amount of effort that goes into learning them. All the little details that can be the difference between winning and losing, but that can also be a negative. Resentment begins to grow and you start to wonder why anyone would want to play these maps. Only practicing them and improving out of stubbornness or willpower or both, let's be honest. But it's still a bloody good show. The tension and suspense builds more and more as the map event goes on. You know that one mistake throws the round away, and that level of focus is nothing to scoff at. So how do I think we can make things both fun to watch while still maintaining a high level of difficulty? Honestly, stop making every comp track feel like it's trying to stretch an identity out to a full minute. That's what I liked about the older Trackmania World Tour maps. It was a difficult map that had pro players in mind, but it also had that little section that gave the map its own unique twist. I appreciate what current comp maps are doing in raising the bar on what we can expect from comps, but I think we're getting to a point where things are getting ridiculous for the sake of being ridiculous. I agree. I agree. But that's the thing, right? Like, you always try to go a step above until you're too late, and then the bubble explodes and then you go back down. It's like how back in the late 2010s games pushed the graphical capability so far but didn't improve the actual gameplay. It's pushing polygons instead of pushing the experience in my eyes. True. Those older Trackmania World Tour maps gave us some fun mechanics to showcase that weren't confined to your local LoL server while still maintaining this expectation of difficulty. I don't want to sound like a boomer and say that things were better back in the day, but like I said above, I think we're reaching a point where mappers are thinking of the most insane set of turns and transitions so they have a better chance of being noticed. I'm not saying that is a bad thing, but I find it annoying, like that time where Track of the Day mappers were grinding their ATs for 40, 50, 80 hours so streamers would play them longer. I'm sure you remember the frustration spam when you were going for all... Yeah. So let's dial back the crazy a bit and lower the barrier of entry a bit for newer players so we can keep the comp scene growing. Not to such a degree that the maps become too easy or gimmicky, but to the point where learning them feels like discovering something new instead of throwing your head against the wall and waiting for things to... This is a good one. Good post, actually. Let me update all of these. I'm updating. There we go. Good post from Legion. Good post. Let's have a look at FTRJ. I have a bit of a minority opinion, but I preferred seeing top players absolutely optimize easy tracks and push maps to 1 pixel of the wall or penalty, or simpler tag, dirt, etc. with only occasional precise hard mechanic identity checks so that the maps have a flow of calm and action. Really good for viewing to have things that you can build up to, map climax, commentators building up and tension, etc. But then that would have uneven rate of time save versus gain, which many people in the pro scene have complained about. It seems like any kind of easy map gets players like PF lol, but it would mean there is more time to practice the harder parts while reduce overall prac time. Makes comp more worth reward if you have specific practice to do, while the rest is regular driving. The fact that current comp maps are hard to finish clean for even Div 2 players in 30 minutes is crazy. It shows the skill but not the pace, if that makes sense. I love seeing how pros and dedicated players can take a cup of the day difficulty track with perhaps a harder identity on top and make PBs faster than I could ever imagine, knowing I too set a time on a map. Current tracks are like, I don't even know how hard this is and what sections are difficult, as it all looks difficult. The difference between a racetrack where you can finish a lap easy but the best drivers are so fast versus an obstacle course where you just want to go through without a crash. And once you do, due to speed checks, you are usually also a fast player. Fair point. Fair point. Pure driving is fun, and the more unusual mechanics I think should be more identity instead of trying to put all of them into all of the maps like Trackmania World Tour has been doing this year. Old TMGL maps had this. Sort of. A modern take on that would be cool, and do 4 or even 8 team 2v2s. Never bring back multiplier though. Red Bull Faster maps had this too, but you can achieve that level with Nadeo blocks too. Open up the comp mapper pool too. If we really want to get crazy, don't just go to the same people for... Yeah, I agree with this. I agree with this point. But the problem is that there's money involved. So that is one thing. Right. Are people gonna map for free, knowing that they might not get their map chosen? But I get the point. Let's read this big post and then we'll have a look at at Granady stake. So far, everyone has been mentioning pretty good things. Okay, let's have a look. So not all of what I'm going to say is necessarily feasible or the best for your tournament specifically, but I'll dump a few points off the top of my head as someone who primarily interacts with Trackmania for the competitive scene. Dates and starting times for competition need to be more more readily available. Anyone with a passing interest is pretty much relying on someone else in Twitch chat to tell them these things. Sure, people who are huge fans might be on a Discord and know how to navigate Trackmania IO to find what information is specific club, but these avenues only work for people who are already invested, while possibly all true. Huge point. Huge point. Point number 2. While this would usually be the role of official casts, I think having pre-recorded segments to explain certain tricks or sections of maps can make viewers feel more up to speed. While I am familiar with Stage 1 Trackmania World Tour map pack, many aren't. A quick rundown on ideal lines, how the section could go wrong, and explaining intricacies, Ice 360s, avoiding reverse gear, blah blah blah, would help. I also think that setting up alternate camera angles can help in some sections, such as the reactor turnaround on the Karluki map this map pack. Again, though this is greatly diminishing returns on time invested to viewership, I don't expect this, but I think on a long enough time frame it would help. Okay, so kind of like what America Masters had with that second POV at the finish line. Maps should probably be themed, at least in name and scenery. Mixed servers aren't going anywhere in competitive for various reasons. However, this approach to route building has also extended to scenery. Maps all look like a generic competitive map, so instead of a vague name like Wheelburn, name the map something concrete like Waterfall. The finish is in a waterfall, and early you go through... Okay, blah, blah, blah. We've seen this many times before. I struggle to identify the current map pack by name. I find it easier to remember the mappers, which the average viewer will not know. New viewers should have a loose understanding. True. Although the potential for these is limited by budget difference between Red Bull and Trackmania World Tour, as you outlined in your post already. Yeah, it's a big problem. Looking back at Red Bull, and even the volcano map from the Volvic Duodash, we see that maps can often be determined by what was supposed to be a cool flip. I don't think we have to entirely do away with those. They're fun, but they need a bit more consistency. If a certain setup saves a second, everyone will go for it, but if it can send you to space or full crash at functionally, not absolutely, random angles, then they are a bit of a double-edged sword. True. My assumption is that most viewers do not appreciate precision sections. Yeah, because they have no clue what the fuck is going on. Like many parts on the Fixon map in the current Trackmania World Tour map pack, precision sections might be better off focusing on avoiding multiple obstacles in a row, like a toned-down Zerator, instead of making turns that are only slightly larger than your car. True. I can see this. I can see this. Because for people that watch, it's probably just looking like it's a normal thing. Like, because pro players don't really crash precision parts that much. So it's like a normal thing. Instead of avoiding something in the line of sight. Makes sense. The tournaments need to attract viewers, but I think prioritizing the desires of pro players is still the way forward. For players streaming their POV, the event can become soured if they complain the whole time about bad bounces or flips, not to mention that there is a whole tier of pro players who barely play. And if they are convinced to play, then the tournament becomes a must-watch. I probably shouldn't single players out, but how often during a tournament do you see people asking, is Carl or Gwen playing? So I think it needs to be a balance of catering to players and reducing friction for audiences to catch up to speed. Quite possible that fast-learn tournaments will provide better viewing experience due to constant discussion of routes, turns, tricks, but as to what extent this should be implemented in Trackmania World Tour, I find it difficult to say. While many of us acknowledge the potential of Trackmania to have a huge esports scene, it's not like you can just change one thing and then have tier 1 orgs enter. There are fundamental issues that hardcap how much can be done, money being a key one, as you mentioned. At the end of the day, I'm going to watch pretty much regardless, so it's tough for me to actually highlight where things can be better. Hope there's, yeah, good post. Anyway, there's a lot more comments that I will probably read on my own time, but it seems like everyone, or well, the majority is sharing the same opinions. that I've read so far. But let's have a listen to what my good friend over here has to say, aka the Granady himself.
Like / not like about Trackmania esport maps. Not every competition can have Red Bull faster map quality. Should tournaments be aimed to pro
Oh, maybe he's gonna read my entire post actually.
players only or include average players more? Okay. Interesting. Hey Trackmaniacs, with Trackmania esports kind of having an uptrend, thanks to virtual mostly, I would like to have a small discussion about the current map designs. I have played hundreds of competitive maps myself over the course of 15 years, and my perception of maps is completely different from someone new to the game. With the whole homologated system for the Trackmania World Tour, I personally like...
Guys, this post, I woke up and I was like, man, I want to type a 2,000 word essay, and then I just did it.
like to get some pointers on what not only casual players like, but also viewing perspectives. Let me first preface this whole discussion with something I've read ever since the Red Bull Faster tournament was played. The maps for this event were amazing. It had a theme, it had charm, and was fun to drive. I fully agree. Difficulty was there, but not to the extreme. So many different skill levels of players could partake in the fun. Yeah. The thing is, like, the maps for Red Bull, like, they were not difficult because everything was like super narrow and there was only one perfect line, and if you were off the perfect line you were
Keep reading, Nico.
No, the maps were pretty open and pretty wild overall and wicked, and they gave enough space for beginners to drive. Like, there was not only one line that was working, but there were like multiple different ones. Okay. And that basically led to some pretty wicked and interesting tricks on the maps that were also not necessarily like planned by the mappers, but that just made it more interesting to discover and to hunt. And because of that, the maps also didn't get boring in my opinion. So yeah, I agree, Red Bull maps were cool. However, people don't realize that these maps were in the making for months and cost a lot of money. Yeah, true. I mean, cost a lot of money mainly because, Red Bull and because of the sponsor elements, I guess. Money that Trackmania World Tour simply just does not have. Production is lacking, resources for running the servers is lacking, pretty much a lot is lacking. True. I fully agree with everyone saying the Red Bull Faster maps were more fun to play / watch, but with the given context, Trackmania World Tour can never achieve this, maybe 20% of it. What? What? Oh, jeepers.
Man, he's allergic to the World Tour.
I mean, yeah, true, but like, also... I mean, did players need that much less, that less time for building these maps? I mean, I guess yes, but mainly because the current Trackmania World Tour maps are like vanilla and not using like custom blocks and obstacles, you know? I mean, look at for example, I mean, you also had it at Comic-Con Baltics. This one Comic-Con Baltics, from the people that watched my stream yesterday, that one map has like a Doritos sponsorship. Sponsorship, you know, because Doritos, haha. Basically, Wizzy built a map where you have like a chips bag on the map, and then you have chips flying around, and you have like driving on the chips and all of that kind of stuff. It's like the same thing, no?
I don't think he realizes how much time goes into it, because I mean, first of all, he has never had a track of the day map. So he doesn't realize how much effort and time goes into it.
Like, there's no way that Doritos map was like only took like 10% of the time that
exactly,
the Red Bull map took. Like, I don't think it was that extreme for Red Bull Faster maps in comparison to normal competitive.
So he has no clue. He has no clue. But that's fine.
Because they also take some time. But that's just my guess. Also, I have no idea. The only thing that I know is that mappers complained a lot about Trackmania World Tour, and that they were not being paid anything or like a lot. Also, they were not really paid a lot, at least. That's what they said publicly. I don't know what they get for
the Dorito map ate up like 80% of the budget for CCV mapping. Yeah, exactly. There you go.
Map.
Yeah, he has no idea. Nobody has an idea. Only
but I mean, everyone is complaining. I mean, there's no money for the players because the price pool is low. There's no money for the mappers. The production is yuck. Yeah, as Spammiej said, everything is lacking. Now the question is, how do you fix this? Or rather, does it need fixing? Oftentimes, I do fairly get called out for having elitist takes when it comes to competition. This stems from being a top player for so many years, nice flex, and wanting the best for the top players. Top players. I like to see very hard maps being driven fast and consistent, but this is something that not everyone can enjoy who have no idea how the game works. with so many more eyes on the game in comparison to years ago, I think it's fair to say maps need to change in order to potentially grow the esport. The only problem here is that when maps are made easier and less punishing, the top players get bored quicker, since they are not challenged enough. So where do you find... Also, first of all, before we read the last chapter, the thing is...
Oh, here we go.
It is definitely possible to make maps playable for beginners, but also for pro players. But I think one of the issues that maps have is that competitive maps are, at the moment at least, mappers try to make them more difficult by making everything like tight, narrow, slow, hard to see. And that's just the wrong kind of difficult. Like some of the Red Bull maps were also super hard, but they were like more open. They were like visually more attracting and they were attractive. And, you know, they just gave players more room. And just because a map gives a player more room, it doesn't mean that the map is like easier. It can be like very difficult as well, even if it's like more room, you know? And that's just one issue that competitive maps have right now. Like mappers are just forcing like one single line working, then if you're off that line, it's mud. And that's also just pretty boring, to be honest. Like, I don't really like playing maps like this. I love opening a map and then being faced with a challenge of what the fastest lines are, trying out different things, and then seeing what works in rounds, what works in time attack. Kind of the same as with weekly shorts, except for the rounds part. You know, I don't want to go onto the map and then being told, yeah, there's exactly this one line, and you have to maximize this as much as possible. In my opinion, there's nothing more boring than that. I really don't like that. And if maps are more open, like, as I said, like the Red Bull maps, they were not like much easier. Some of them.
See how also Granady is referring back to the Red Bull maps?
Were, yeah, but some of them were also very hard. For example, Alpine or also Downhill. Downhill is also a good example. Downhill, the full dirt map.
It's the exact point why this was made.
It wasn't really narrow, but it was super hard.
Everyone is circling back. Everyone is circling back to Red Bull.
Hard to drive it consistent because of no slides, airtime reduction, penalty grass skip, quarter pipe jumps, all of that kind of stuff. But these kind of things are often missing on like these vanilla competitive maps.
I mentioned Red Bull one time. I wrote it one time.
Like just take a look at like the Beacon World League maps, for example. Every map was just narrow.
I mean, that was the
every
whole,
map was just slow. It was hard to see, and because of that, it was also just bad to spectate for the players. So, yeah. Okay. Anyway, so where do we find the balance on all of this? It almost feels like there is not really a middle ground, as the skill gaps between the top and the average Trackmania player is so large. Do tournament organizers aim more towards better viewing experience, engaging more of the community and hopefully grow in that way, but not giving that the real top players the challenging itch they seek? Or do you do the complete opposite and ignore the more casual players, viewers, and only aim for the top players who pretty much run the esports anyway? I ask these questions because I am going to be organizing my own homologated events. Aha, okay. Spammiej with the homologated move. Very nice. I knew that was that Spam was homologated for quite some time already, ever since I met him on LAN. So yeah, I'm glad to homologate with him. Which will be way more focused on the average player experience. Fun competitive maps that have a theme and drive a bit more sloppy. I can. Yeah. Let's first of all finish. Let me know what you all think. If you're not watching Trackmania Esports for some particular reasons, not mentioned above, I would like to know them also. Take care, everyone. P.S. I am sure I made spelling errors. Don't lynch me. I will definitely annihilate you, Spammy guy. Yeah, so if you ask me...
Alright, let's hear it.
The best kind of competitive maps that you can have are the kind of maps that Raider builds. Maps need to be very entertaining to watch. Super important. Maps need to be easy to understand. But not necessarily easy to drive. That's like a different thing. But people need to like easily see a map and know what's going on, kinda. And they also need to vary from each other. They need to have like a theme.
What
like
did he
every
say?
map looks like the same and has like the same know what's going on, kinda. And they also need to vary from each other. They need to have like a theme. Like if every map looks like the same and has like the same pace and same scenery and same kind of style, it's just bad for a map pack. That's just what I would say.
Yeah.
So yeah, biggest focus should be on maps being entertaining. Especially for spectating, because yeah, cool if you have super cooked esport maps and there's always one line working and perfectly narrow through turns, zack. But then if none of the viewers can understand it and then the tournament has 100 viewers, yeah, congrats. If that's what you want, then go ahead and keep building this. But in my opinion, maps need to be very entertaining to watch And especially if you have a map pack with like many maps, the maps need to vary and differ from each other. And they need to have a theme so that a viewer can be like, ah, yeah, this is the map with the dirt, and this is the map with the quarter pipes, and this is the map with the pipes and stuff, you know? That's what you need. Okay. Anyway, guys, it is cup of the day time.
Yeah. Well, that was it. That was that. That was that. Let's see. Are there any comments? Now there is. There we go. So if you wanna have some input on this post, you can drop your comment in here. I will read pretty much the remaining comments in my own time. Yeah, that's about it. That is about it. Seems like everyone has got an opinion about this, so it's always good to get the conversation going. And yeah, thanks for everyone commenting on this post. So I know what people want, and I can work on giving the best, exciting, most fun, homologated events myself. So 165 post karma. My posts are pretty good, not gonna lie. This was probably my peak, and it was a fucking ChatGPT post that I didn't even write. I copy pasted it from Cookie, and it got 123 comments, more than an actual post that I put my soul in.